Gaming is something I think we all here kind of love. Gaming is something that I started this entire channel about. I love gaming, and it's why I think Stop Killing Games is an important initiative to support. Stop Killing Games aims to preserve games going forward. Essentially, if you don't know anything about it, publishers have the capabilities to shut down game servers for single player games as well, and essentially not allow them to run anymore, even if you own a copy of it locally. So, if you have a CD copy of it. An example of a game that had that issue was The Crew, where The Crew came out, people played it, people liked it, and eventually, once that game wasn't deemed profitable to run anymore, it was shut down, even with the single player campaign. So you couldn't play the single player of the game because it required you to log in online. And Stop Killing Games aims to remove that, just not let them do that. Not through having them support the game endlessly, that's not going to be the case almost ever, but through just having a way of seeing when it expires or just having a way of accessing the content that you have purchased. I think this initiative is something that's important to support, and we'll be getting into the nitty and gritty of it now. Now, when we're talking about Stop Killing Games, we're also talking about preserving games. And an example of a game that has been, in a way, preserved through the community that surrounds it is Battleborn through the Reborn mod, which is a mod that allows you to, in current day, play Battleborn, which is the game that we are playing. And Battleborn, if you don't know at all, is a game that released around the same time as Overwatch, a game that I was super interested in myself, and I ended up purchasing it. For only 2 years later, for it to be shut down, the servers went offline, and now I can't even access the single player campaign. However, through the Reborn mod, I can actually still play Battleborn in 2025. That is not something every game has, and this exact thing is somewhat change related to what Stop Killing Games is. Essentially, Stop Killing Games just wants there to be a way for games to preserve, for there to be an end of life plan, so you can access your game into the future, which would matter a lot for people who might play something like Concord, which is a game that released was a massive failure and then shut down 2 weeks later. However, in that case, at least people got refunds, but with Battleborn, you probably didn't. And here's the thing. Battleborn might not necessarily be the best game, but it is a game that is worth experiencing if you are a Borderlands fan, as it is one of the few spin-offs or like entirely breakaways from the franchise that, well, Gearbox ever did. And it's a game that really wasn't that well preserved at all, as it is entirely unplayable, despite the fact that I purchased my own game for my money. And that is one of those things that, in my opinion, really fucking sucks. If you look at Battleborn, it is clear that it has a certain visual style to it, from the explosions to everything else. It is a really interesting story as well. On top of that, there's probably thousands of hours here just put into this game to make something that was truly special, and yet it was never preserved. It was left to die, and I think that is a fucking shame. And I think it's a shame that people who purchased it can't even access the single player version of the game. To give you an idea of what this game is about, since I don't think a lot of people know anymore, remember, it was essentially a game where you're placed in a universe where there's only one habitable planet left, and then you fight as the good guys versus the evil. It is a fairly simple and straightforward plot, yet it is interesting enough and sci-fi enough for me to at least have grabbed my attention. And unfortunately, this is not a game that is playable by any normal means. You can't just go ahead and purchase your copy, then download it and play it. No, nowadays you have to go to the Battleborn Reborn Discord and then download a mod file and then mod the game for it to even run. And that is because the game is connected to an online server that right now is shut down, that is unplayable. And that way, the game is unplayable for everybody, including the single player campaign, which is not something that, in my opinion, is okay at all. It is the equivalent of you buying a game or buying any other product, really. It could be a lawnmower, and then the people you purchased the lawnmower from came over a few weeks later and destroyed that lawnmower. Now, the reason why publishers shut down these games is because they're deemed not to be profitable. And profits is really the key word here, as it is deemed to be all about the money, and it is not currently making any money, so they shut it down to not have to pay the server cost. And that is in and of itself fairly reasonable. I don't think anybody here is expecting the publishers to sort of support the game forever. The developers don't have to continue to make content for it or continue to pay the server cost. There just needs to be an end-of-life plan that allows the consumers, like me and you, to continue to access our game. That is what Stop Killing Games is. Now, unfortunately, it's hard to not mention Pirate Software when talking about Stop Killing Games. I don't want to spend a lot of time on him, so let me just say this. Pirate Software has said some things about Stop Killing Games that are false. They are provably false, and everybody under the sun has at this point disproven them. Now, the reason why I personally really like Stop Killing Games, like I've said, is preservation. I think preservation is important, as I think the media that we consume and the media that we play or watch or read really is a reflection of our culture to a certain extent. It is a reflection of something that once existed. And furthermore, it can help us into understanding maybe ourselves a little bit or the favorite franchise that you might have. For me, as an example, I love Borderlands. I would be really fucking interested in playing Battleborn further down the road after maybe Borderlands 4, because that would give me some perspective on where some of the systems came from. And I think that's really cool. I love being able to go back and play older games. Like I've mentioned, I did it with Dark Souls. When I played Elden Ring, I went back and played through all of the other Souls games, because I like to see how it evolved. And not being able to do that, I think, is really detrimental. It sort of just refutes people from being able to learn from the past and all of that. And on a further level, even if you aren't interested in games at all, you might not be. Maybe you are a movie guy, you love your movies. Then being able to preserve the movies that you like watching should be something that you're interested in. And when the limelight gets shone on one thing, when it is shining on the gaming industry, there is usually a spotlight around on the other things. Maybe that could be bad practices within the streaming industry for movies, where some movies aren't preserved either. And that is one of those things that, in my opinion, is important, because preservation is important. On top of that, I want to just say, if you don't really care about this industry, if you don't think you're affected by it as a gamer, there are actually really popular games right now that are set to have the chance of being shut down once they aren't popular anymore. Games like Diablo 3, where Blizzard can fundamentally go down and shut down your access to it, just because if they really want to. That is a part of the license agreement that you have with Blizzard. It is a bit of an issue, right? Like, you want to be able to play the games that you have purchased in the future. You want to be able to experience their stories and their worlds. And furthermore, if they might end up in the future being your favorite franchise, you might want to be able to go back and experience how they were before the installment that you are playing, which is an important thing to allow people to do. Because, again, just learning from it, you see how the game evolves. If you look at things like Dark Souls and Kingsfield, you can see how some of the fundamental ideas for Dark Souls were already existing in Kingsfield. And that shit is kind of fascinating, right? On like a sort of learning level, that is really fucking cool. Now, to round out this video, I want to give you a status update of the current progress of Stop Killing Games. For the EU initiative, we're sitting at 874,000 signatures. The goal is 1 million. At 1 million signatures, it will be taken up in Parliament. Now, of course, this also means that there still is a need for more signatures, despite the fact that we are 87% of the way there. Now, go and sign up if you have the chance to do so. It is important to go and support these sort of things that we have discussed. Preservation is a major issue and something that is important. And if not for the sake of preservation and games history, then just for the fact that you want to be able to use your product into the future. Now, if you are from the UK initiative is in at 109,000 signatures at the time of recording this, meaning that it has passed and will be taken up into Parliament for debate. Now, the more people on either of these initiatives pass the goal, will just create more pressure for the governments to actually take this up as an actual issue and take it seriously. Therefore, I believe even if you live in the UK or you live in the EU when it hits 1 million eventually, I think you should still sign on to these signatures if you haven't. Because giving your signature to the initiatives will just create more pressure for the government to actually do something about it. And on top of that, there might be some things that will be like sort of taken away from it, like some of the signatures might be fake or anything like that. And in case of that, the more signatures, the better. Of course, don't go and sign on twice or anything like that. If you're from the US, I think the best way to help is honestly just to create awareness about it. Talk about these sort of issues, create content, do something just to get more eyes on it, because these are real issues and we should have a look at it. And I think it's important that we get a look at these preservation issues with especially games. Lastly, I want to let you know if you want to play Battleborn in 2025, I've left a link to the Reborn mod in the description. And for a last shout out, I want to shout out a guy on Twitter called Ink Not Mine, who actually made the art that I used for this thumbnail. Now, if you want to go and support him, I've also left his link in the description. It's an incredibly talented guy, and just go and check him out. He also supports this. And in general, go and sign on if you haven't. Do your part. And again, links in the description for both of the initiatives, the Reborn mod, and the artist who helped me with the thumbnail.